Welcome to the 2018-2019 NBA season. Hi, I'm Monty McCutcheon. In the following video, we're going to explain this year's points of education. Let's start with freedom of movement on the perimeter, which includes impedes, wraps, and contact on screens. This first play is an example of a defensive foul for impeding progress. The highlighted defensive player, Corey Joseph, reaches out and grabs the midsection of the moving offensive player, Rodney Hood, as Hood attempts to cut to the basket. Freedom of movement is crucial to the flow of the NBA game. This next example will show the highlighted defensive player, DeJounte Murray, reaches arms around the moving offensive player, Klay Thompson, and he impedes Thompson's progress as Thompson cuts across the paint. This is a defensive foul on Murray for impeding progress. Another example of a hold that occurs off ball can be seen here. The defender, Shane Larkin, will reach out with both hands and he will grab the offensive cutter, J.J. Redick. Redick's freedom of movement is clearly affected and the defensive foul is correctly called by the slot official. Let's now focus on the highlighted defensive player, Jonas Valanciunas, on this play. Valanciunas steps forward into the moving offensive player, Kevin Love, and he delivers contact with his shoulder to Love. This type of contact is illegal and is correctly ruled to be a defensive foul for impeding progress. A point of emphasis with the officials this season will be to call wraps by defensive players, even when the offensive player is stationary. Here we will see the defender, Ryan Anderson, wrap his right arm around the waist of his stationary opponent, Anthony Tolliver. This type of arm wrap is illegal and will be called consistently by officials this season. This next play is another example of a defensive foul for impeding progress. The highlighted defensive player, Julius Randle, wraps his arms around the offensive player, Anthony Davis, who is moving to set the screen. This contact affects Davis's freedom of movement and shall be called throughout the season. This is another example of a defensive foul for impeding progress, again involving a pick-and-roll play. The highlighted defensive player, Nene, grabs the arm of the screener, Jeremy Grant, and this grab by Nene impedes Grant's ability to roll to the basket. Next, let's look at another type of illegal contact as Bradley Beal goes to set a screen here for John Wall. C.J. Miles pushes Beal past his desired position and right into the on-ball defender, Kyle Lowry. This illegal contact by Miles clearly affected Beal's freedom of movement, and it is a defensive foul. There are freedom of movement guidelines for the post that our officials will be diligent in enforcing this year. They include wraps, dislodges, and contact on post moves to the basket. This first play in this section is an example of an illegal arm wrap in the post area. The defensive post player, Domantas Sabonis, wraps his right arm around the hip of his opponent, Greg Monroe. Arm wraps are illegal regardless of where they occur on the court and whether or not the opponent is attempting to move. Similar to the previous play, this time we see two guards matched up in the post, and again it is the defensive player, Tyler Ulis, who wraps his right arm around his opponent, Chris Paul. Arm wraps are illegal anywhere they occur on the court, whether they are committed by defensive or offensive players. This next example will show a post defender using both arms to affect his opponent's freedom of movement. The defender, Kelly Oubre, reaches out with both arms and he grabs the shoulders of his opponent, Ben Simmons, and he pulls Simmons backward and out of his legally obtained position. Oubre's actions clearly affected the freedom of movement of Simmons, and a defensive foul is warranted. The guidelines for freedom of movement apply to offensive players as well. Here, DeMarcus Cousins uses his left arm to grab and hold off his legal defender, Rudy Gay. This illegal contact by Cousins prevents Gay from being able to defend the entry pass, and an offensive foul should be called on this play. This next play is an example of an offensive foul for clamping an opponent's arm. The highlighted offensive player, Jeremy Grant, uses his left arm to lock and hold Myers Leonard's left arm, limiting Leonard's ability to defend the play. This is an offensive foul. Similar to the previous play, we see an offensive post player, Paul Millsap, clamp his legal defender. Millsap uses his right arm to clamp defender Evan Turner's arm, preventing Turner from defending the play. The next two examples will focus on jersey grabs. The highlighted defensive player, Stanley Johnson, reaches back and illegally grabs the uniform of Timofey Mozgov, who is calling for the ball in the post. This illegal uniform grab clearly restricts Mozgov's freedom of movement, and thus, this is a defensive foul that needs to be called. Next, we will see an example of an offensive foul for a uniform grab. The offensive post player, DeAndre Jordan, reaches back and grabs the jersey of his opponent, Karl Anthony Towns. Jordan's shirt grab clearly affects Towns' ability to move freely and to defend the play, and an offensive foul should be called here. The post defender here, Cheick Diallo, uses his right knee to dislodge his opponent Kevin Love as Love attempts to establish position in the painted area. A defender may legally position his leg between the legs of an offensive player in the lower defensive box to maintain his position, but once the defender's foot is lifted off the floor, dislodging his opponent as we see here, a foul should be assessed. Offensive post players are not allowed to dislodge their legal defenders either. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Steven Adams, will extend both of his arms and he will push his legal defender, Marquise Chris, in the back. This illegal contact dislodges Chris, and an offensive foul should be whistled. Let's next take a look at two plays in succession. First, we will focus on the contact in the post as the offensive player, Dwight Howard, goes to the basket. The defender, Bismack Biyombo, steps forward and to his left, body-checking Howard and dislodging him as he attempts to curl into the paint. This is a defensive foul on Biyombo for affecting the rhythm and balance of the offensive player. Now let's look at another matchup between the same two players in the same game, and we can focus on the difference in the two plays. This time, the defender Biyombo maintains a legal defensive position the entire play, and he does not dislodge Howard, nor does he affect Howard's speed, quickness, balance, and rhythm. This is a legal defensive play and a good guide for all post defenders.